Welcome to Thalira Tales, where stories bloom in silence, carrying emotion, mystery, and hidden truth. Step in and let the tale unfold.
The ring of my cell phone sliced through the silence of my home office like a knife. The name of the Sterling Academy danced on the screen. It was a Monday afternoon. William, my husband, was supposedly in Chicago for another of his endless business trips. I swiped to answer. "This is Charlotte Hayes." The voice of the headmaster's secretary was tense. "Mrs. Hayes, we need you to come to the school immediately." "It's your son, Ethan. There's been an incident." Incident. I set my pen down on the quarterly reports. I was reviewing the numbers of my father's company, which I had inherited. Numbers never lied. People, on the other hand, were a different story. What kind of incident? A slight hesitation on the other end. A rather serious fight. The headmaster will explain, but you need to come and pick him up. He's been suspended effective immediately. I hung up without another word. There was no, "I hope it's nothing serious." No, my poor baby. Those phrases had gotten stuck in my throat years ago. I grabbed my purse and the car keys. My tall, slender silhouette moved quickly down the hallway of our Park Avenue townhouse. Not pausing at the family portraits, William insisted on hanging. Perfect, frozen smiles. The Manhattan traffic was dense, but I navigated it with the cold precision of someone used to making high-speed decisions. My mind, however, wasn't on the road. It was on Ethan. 8 years old. 8 years of a constant battle of a dull and growing resistance to everything I represented: rules, boundaries, expectations. William was always the mediator, always with his "let it go, Charlotte. He's just a boy." His "don't be so hard on him." His "it's like you don't love him." That last question, with its hint of false concern, was his favorite. I parked in the reserved spot. The school building, sober and steeped in tradition, greeted me with its usual cloistered air. The secretary led me directly to the office of the headmaster, Mr. Davies. There, slouched in a chair, displaying an insolence that was too big even for his small frame, was Ethan. His lip was slightly swollen. The immaculate uniform from that morning now had a dirt stain on the knee. His eyes, the same deceptively clear green as William's, looked me up and down without a hint of remorse or relief. Only annoyance. "Good afternoon, Mrs. Hayes." Mr. Davies, a man in his 50s with a weary expression, stood up. "I'm sorry to have you come in under these circumstances." "Explain them, please." I sat down without greeting Ethan. I felt his glare on me. Ethan has been involved in a very serious physical altercation during recess, with a female student. A girl. I repeated the phrase now, looking directly at my son. "You hit a girl, Ethan." He shrugged, a dismissive gesture he'd copied from his father. "She started it. She's some crazy girl from that group home next door. She came after me. She attacked me." Mr. Davies cleared his throat. "The situation is more complex. The girl Valerie is from the street. Jude's home for children. She comes for some of our after-school activities. According to several witnesses, Ethan and a few of his friends have been, let's say, bothering a group of younger girls. Insults, taking their lunch, that sort of thing." Valerie intervened. "And yes, she did throw the first punch, but it was in defense of another girl whom Ethan was pushing." My voice was a thread of ice. "Bullying, you mean?" The headmaster adjusted his glasses. "We are investigating previous complaints from some of the girls. They hadn't been formally filed. Out of fear. Today it all boiled over." I turned back to Ethan. "Is that true? They're a bunch of crybabies. And that Valerie is a psycho. They should lock her up." His tone was flat, arrogant. Not a trace of shame. He spoke of the other girls as if they were insects. "Be quiet." The command came out dry, without raising my voice, but with an authority that made even Mr. Davies flinch slightly. Ethan pressed his lips together, but his gaze remained defiant. "And the other girl, the one who intervened. Is she all right?" "A few scrapes and bruises, but nothing serious. Her counselor already came to pick her up. She was very vehement in her defense of the girl." Mr. Davies sighed. "Mrs. Hayes, Ethan is suspended for 1 week. This, combined with the behavioral reports we've been observing, means we need an urgent meeting with both parents when your husband returns. This cannot continue." I nodded. "I understand. May I take him now?" The headmaster nodded, relieved. Ethan jumped up, brushing past me and walking into the hall without a backward glance. He didn't say sorry. I didn't say, "You'll be sorry." I paid a fortune in tuition for my son to receive the best education, not for me to apologize for his thuggish behavior. The walk to the car was a hostile silence. As I started the engine, he was the one who broke the quiet. Dad wouldn't have yelled at me like that. He understands me. Your father isn't here. I drove with my hands firm on the steering wheel, and understanding stupidity is not the same as condoning it. I didn't do anything wrong. He burst out, his childish fury suddenly surfacing. They're liars, and you always take their side. You're such a... Be very careful what word you choose. Ethan. I glanced at him in the rearview mirror. My dark, cold eyes met his. The rage in him hit a wall of pure ice. He huffed and crossed his arms, staring out the window. A quick, unwelcome thought crossed my mind. He's not mine. Not in the biological sense he was, but in something deeper. There was no connection, not even the conflicted bond that sometimes arises from love. Just constant friction. A strangeness that grew with the years. William said it was me, that I was too cold, that I didn't know how to show affection. Maybe he had a point. But with Ethan from the very beginning, every gesture of affection had gotten stuck in my throat. We're going to the doctor's, I said, changing direction. Why? Nothing hurts, he protested. Your lip is swollen and you were in a fight. A quick checkup at the clinic. It's protocol. And because I added internally, I don't trust your version of events or your apparent toughness. It was my responsibility. At least the legal one. At the Mount Sinai emergency room, the wait was brief. The name Hayes still carried some weight. While a young, listless resident checked Ethan, I waited in the hallway, arms crossed, mentally reviewing tomorrow's meeting with the Korean lawyers. The world, my world, couldn't stop for an 8-year-old's tantrums. Charlotte Hayes. The female voice, tinged with a hint of doubt, made me turn. A woman in her early 50s, her salt and pepper hair pulled back, in a practical bun, reading glasses hanging from the neck of her white coat, was looking at me with a smile of recognition. I'm sorry, do I know you? I asked, my mind filing through faces at high speed. I'm Dr. Evelyn Reed. I delivered your baby 8 years ago. Right here in this hospital. Her smile widened. It was a complicated case. I don't forget those. An emergency C-section. Severe preeclampsia. You were in very bad shape. The memories, blurry and fragmented by medication and pain, came back in fits and starts. White lights, muffled voices, a feeling of suffocation. And then, nothing. And then William's voice telling me something about our son, small, weak. Oh yes. I nodded, forcing a polite smile. Of course. A lot of water under the bridge since then. You can say that again. Her gaze, warm and professional, rested on me, then glanced towards the examination room where Ethan was, and then back to me with an expression of genuine curiosity. And how is your daughter, I mean? Is everything all right with her? The air in the sterile, cold hallway seemed to solidify around me. For a second, maybe two. My mind went blank. A low hum started in my ears. I'm sorry, the words were mine, but the voice sounded alien. Flat. Dr. Reed frowned slightly, her kind smile freezing into a look of polite confusion. Your daughter. The baby girl. You gave birth to a baby girl. A difficult delivery, but the little one, despite being premature, was a fighter. Don't you remember? My lungs constricted. I looked at the doctor, at her sincere brown eyes, searching for a hint of a joke, of a mistake. There was none. Only the quiet certainty of a professional who remembered her job. Dr. Reed, I began, my voice, now holding a controlled edge, the same one I used in board meetings when someone presented incorrect figures. There must be some confusion. I gave birth to a boy. To Ethan. I gestured with my head towards the exam room. He's 8 years old. The woman blinked, then shook her head, not defiantly, but with the firmness of someone certain of the facts. No, I'm sorry, but that's impossible. I was the on-call OB, GYN. I attended you myself. I delivered the baby girl myself. It was a girl. I noted it on the chart. I signed it. She weighed maybe 4.5 pounds, but she screamed with enviable force as soon as we gave her a little help. She paused, her expression clouding with concern. Did they tell you something different? The chart. My husband. I interrupted, noticing how the name William felt like lead on my tongue. My husband was with the baby. He said it was a boy. That he was small, that he needed an incubator. I was sedated, very weak. I didn't see him until later. Dr. Reed's face transformed. Confusion gave way to a slow understanding, and then to an alarm she tried and failed to conceal. Mrs. Hayes. Charlotte. I left for a research fellowship in the UK the day after your delivery. I was gone for almost 2 years. The residents fill out the final paperwork, but I supervise and sign the initial delivery report. I signed a report for a female infant. No question about it. She lowered her voice, leaning in a little. If they told you it was a boy, that's not a confusion. It's impossible for me to be mistaken about something like that. The hum in my ears became a deafening roar. Everything around me, the smell of antiseptic, the comings and goings of nurses, the fluorescent lights seemed to recede, leaving me alone in a resonant empty space echoing with those words. Impossible. Girl. Female. Do you have a copy of that report? I heard my own voice ask from a great distance. She shook her head, apologetic. Not personally. It would be in the hospital archives, but you'd need authorization or a court order. Listen, she added, seeing my pale face, maybe there was a clerical error after I left. Sometimes with the chaos of emergencies. But my memory is very clear. It was a girl. At that moment, the door to the exam room opened. Ethan came out pulling at the sleeve of his sweater with a bored look. Can we go now? This is a drag. Dr. Reed looked at Ethan. She studied him from his expensive shoes to his disdainful expression. Then she looked back at me, and in her eyes I saw the last vestige of doubt vanish, replaced by something more solid and terrible. The certainty that something monstrous had happened in her delivery ward. Her mouth opened as if to say something more, but she held back. Ethan, go to the car. Now. The order was automatic. He shot me a venomous look, but surprised perhaps by my tone, obeyed, dragging his feet. I turned back to the doctor. Thank you for your precision, doctor. I'm sorry for the trouble. Charlotte, wait. She reached out a hand, but I was already turning away. I walked down the hall with my back straight, my heels clicking on the linoleum with a perfect, controlled rhythm. Each step was a hammer blow inside my skull, echoing the words. Girl. Impossible. I delivered the baby girl. In the car, Ethan wouldn't stop complaining. What did that old lady want? Does she know you? She seemed nuts. Shut up, Ethan. This time my voice had no edge. It had the cold, absolute weight of steel. He fell silent, surprised again. Perhaps for the first time in his life, he heard me speak to him with something other than contained irritation or cold indifference. It was an abyssal distance, as if I weren't even in the same car on the same planet. I drove home in a sepulchral silence. The lights of the city twinkled indifferent. I left Ethan with the housekeeper without a word and went up to my study. I closed the door, leaned against it, and for a moment, just one moment, I let the tremor run through my hands. Then I took a deep breath. The fear, the confusion, the incipient panic, I compressed them into a remote corner of my mind. There was a problem of colossal magnitude, and problems are analyzed, dissected, and solved. I shook my head. No. First, I had to verify. The doctor could be mistaken. She could be confusing me with another patient. It was possible. Everything was possible. But then, like a flash of lightning in the dark, I remembered Ethan's expression when he saw the doctor. There was no curiosity, none of the normal shyness of a child before a stranger. There was disdain, as if he were evaluating her and finding her inferior. Exactly the same look William gave waiters, sales clerks, anyone he considered beneath his status. A look I had always attributed to a poor paternal example. But now that look seemed like a seal of authenticity. The phone rang. William. The photo of his perfect smile lit up the screen. I swiped to answer. Hello. My voice sounded so normal, it astonished even me. Honey, how are you? I just got a message from the school. What happened with Ethan? His tone was one of theatrical concern, slightly weary, as if his son's troubles were a minor but constant annoyance in his busy life. Yes, he hit a girl. Or rather, a girl hit him for bullying other kids. I kept the information concise, clear. My God, is he okay? Did they hurt him? The alarm in his voice sounded genuine. Too genuine. Focused only on Ethan. A swollen lip. Nothing serious. I took him to Mount Sinai just in case. Well, thank God. That boy is so active, you know how boys are. Is the other girl from a good family? I hope there won't be any trouble. I ignored his question. By the way, I said, letting the words drop with the casualness of someone commenting on the weather at the hospital, I ran into the doctor who delivered the baby. Dr. Reed. Do you remember her? From the other end of the line, there was only silence. A silence so dense and sudden it seemed to absorb even the background noise of the Chicago street that always filtered through his calls. It lasted a second, maybe two. Too long. Reed, his voice finally returned, but it had changed. A higher, forced tone. No, doesn't ring a bell. There were a lot of doctors. It was all a mess. Honey, why? What did she want? Nothing, just to say hello. Asked about the baby. I paused for a minimal, lethal beat. About the baby girl. Another silence. Shorter but charged. The baby girl. What a strange thing to say. She must be confused. She must be getting old. Who knows what patient she was remembering? Don't pay any attention to it. He was talking fast, tripping over his words. Look, honey, I have to go. They're calling me into a meeting. Take care of Ethan. Give him a kiss from me. I'll talk to the headmaster when I get back. Don't worry about it. He hung up. Or rather, he disconnected the call. I stared at the now black screen of my phone. In the silence of my study, Dr. Reed's words resonated with a terrifying clarity. I delivered the baby girl myself. And William's reaction, the silence, the rush to hang up, the immediate denial before I had even insinuated anything. I placed my trembling hands on the cool surface of my desk. No, they weren't trembling. I looked at them. They were perfectly still. Impossible, the doctor had said. But in my world, the world of balance sheets and contracts, impossible was just a problem for which you hadn't yet found the right data. And I, Charlotte Hayes, had just found the first inconsistency in the most important balance sheet of my life. And I would not rest until I reconciled it, no matter who I had to run over to do it. Starting with the man whose voice, filled with a guilty haste, still echoed in my ears. The game, though he didn't know it yet, had just begun, and I have never been one to lose. The night after William's call was long and silent. I didn't sleep. I sat in the armchair in my study, facing the window that overlooked the inner courtyard, and let the city sleep around me. My thoughts weren't chaotic. They were methodical, incisive, like a scalpel dissecting a lie. First, Dr. Reed. Her certainty was professional, not personal. She gained nothing by telling me that. Second, William. His silence on the phone had been as eloquent as a scream. Third, Ethan. The coldness between us wasn't just a clash of personalities. It was something deeper, a chasm that had opened in the delivery room itself, and had been growing year after year. I needed data. Facts, not suppositions. By dawn, as the first rays of winter light cut through the New York sky, I had a plan. A cold plan, like me. Ethan came down for breakfast after 9, scowling. His suspension from school seemed like a trophy to him. He sat down without looking at me, took the bowl of cereal the housekeeper Louisa placed in front of him, and began to eat noisily. Your father is calling this afternoon, I said, without looking up from the Wall Street Journal. He'll want to talk to you. He shrugged. And I'll talk to him. To tell him how you treated me yesterday. Like I was a criminal. You behaved like one, I replied, turning a page. And criminals, when they're caught, usually face consequences. 1 week with no video games and no going out. His spoon clattered against the bottom of the bowl. You can't do that. Dad won't let you. I finally looked up. I looked at him, not with anger but with a glacial curiosity. I studied each of his features. The straight brown hair, too fine like William's, the straight nose, but the shape of his jaw. Whose was that Jessica's? I had no photos of her. William had said years ago that she was a meaningless college fling, that she had moved to San Diego. He never talked about her. Your father, I said, measuring each word, is not here. The rules of this house, as long as you are under this roof, are set by me. The console in my room now. And your phone. You'll get it back at dinner time, only to speak with your father. His face flushed with rage. For a moment I thought he might lunge at me, but he didn't. He just shot me a look of pure hatred. He threw the spoon on the table, spattering milk, and ran upstairs. A minute later, he came back down with the console and his phone. He dropped them on the marble table with a loud thud and went back up, slamming his door. Louisa, who had been watching from the kitchen doorway, looked like she was about to say something. I looked at her. She closed her mouth and retreated silently. It was none of her business. I picked up Ethan's phone. No password. He felt too secure. I scanned it quickly. Texts to his father complaining about me. Messages to contacts with video game handles planning some mischief. Nothing useful. But in the photos, there were several selfies with William. In a park I didn't recognize. At a mall. And in a blurry one in the background, a blonde woman sat at a terrace cafe, her back to the camera. William had his arm around Ethan, smiling. It was a smile he never used with me. It was genuine. I put the phone away. I left the console where it was. I went up to the attic. There, in archive boxes labeled by year, I kept documents. I wasn't a sentimental person, but I was methodical. I found the box from 8 years ago, 2018. I blew off the dust. Inside, hospital bills, medical reports from my pregnancy checkups, congratulatory cards, and a day planner from that year. I opened it. The pages from the first few months were filled with meetings, business trips, until May. Then my normally firm handwriting became shakier, scarcer. June was almost blank, except for one note on the 15th ultrasound. All good. Active baby girl. I had completely forgotten. Girl. The word burned my eyes. I kept turning pages. July, August. The last clear entry was September 2nd, admitted. Bed rest. High BP. Then a jump in time. The next entry was from late September in William's handwriting. Discharged. Take care of Charlotte. Ethan home. Petty checkup. Ethan. Always Ethan. I looked for my discharge summary. It was a brief document signed by a resident whose name I didn't recognize. It indicated emergency C-section delivery. Product male, 4 pounds 12 ounces. Admitted to NICU for prematurity. Mother with severe preeclampsia stabilized. It didn't mention Dr. Reed. The signature was illegible. But I had something else. A receipt. A small, wrinkled piece of paper attached with a paperclip to an invoice. It was from the hospital parking garage. Date the 12th of September 2018. Time in 3:15 a.m. Timeout 4:30 p.m. The vehicle Williams Audi. But the license plate wasn't our car's. It was another one I didn't recognize. Why had I kept this I didn't remember? Maybe to expense the parking, but now it was a data point. William was at the hospital that early morning. My delivery from what little I remembered was around 5 a.m. He had arrived before and left much later. He said he had been in the waiting room agonizing. 13 hours of parking. It was possible. But the car, I took out my phone. I searched online for a license plate lookup service. I entered the numbers and letters. The result took a few seconds. Vehicle 2016 Honda Civic. Registered owner Jessica Miller. Address in Queens, NY. Not San Diego. My heart gave a dry, hard thump. Not of pain, but of pure adrenaline. Of, aha. Jessica. Here in New York, in 2018. And William used her car the night I gave birth. The pieces were starting to fall not into place, but into a completely different monstrous picture. I needed more. I needed to know about Jessica. And I needed access to the hospital archives. For that, I needed someone discreet, someone who wouldn't ask questions in exchange for a handsome payment. I remembered an old contact of my father's, a man who used to solve delicate problems for the company, Frank Russo. He had supposedly left that world and started a fairly discreet private investigation agency. I found his number in my inherited contact list. There it was, Frank Russo. Various matters. I dialed. He answered on the second ring. A voice raspy from cigarettes. Russo. Frank, it's Charlotte. Charlotte Hayes. A brief silence. Charlotte. It's been years. Your father? My father is gone. This is about me. I need some discreet and fast services. Fast always costs more, Charlotte. You know that. Money is not an issue. I need information on 2 people. Everything you can find. Movements, relationships. The clinical history of a birth from 8 years ago. And some light surveillance. Give me names. No questions about why. I liked that about Frank. William Hayes, my husband. And Jessica Miller, a possible ex of William's. I believe she lives in New York. Starting with the 12th of September 2018, he was at Mount Sinai with her car. She was probably there too. I need to confirm if she gave birth there on or around that date. On the other end of the line, I heard the click of a lighter. A long drag. Domestic stuff, he exhaled. The messiest kind. Anything else, yes. My son, Ethan. 8 years old. I want to know if he's been seeing this, Jessica. Where? When? Photos, if possible. No bugs, just tracking. Got it, understood. I'll send you an estimate and the confidentiality agreement in an hour. Half up front. Weekly reports, unless something urgent comes up. Perfect. I hung up. I felt no relief. Just a sharper determination. While Frank worked, I had another riskier avenue. I went down to the kitchen. Ethan was watching TV in the living room, the volume too loud. I walked over. He was watching some cartoon. He didn't even flinch. "Ethan," I said. He pretended not to hear. "Ethan," I repeated more firmly. "What?" He grumbled without taking his eyes off the screen. "Do you remember when you were little, before you started school?" He shrugged. Little. Why did anyone ever take you to the park? Besides, your father or me, or a family friend?" I chose the word carefully. He turned slowly. His green eyes so much like his father's scrutinized me with a suspicion unbefitting a child. "What's this about curiosity? Your father traveled a lot. Maybe a neighbor." I left the sentence hanging. "Sometimes Louisa took me," he said with disdain, "but she's a pain. Or Mr. Thomas, the driver, but he doesn't come anymore." He paused. Then, as if it just occurred to him, he added, "Sometimes when I was smaller, Dad would take me to see a friend of his. She had a dog. I liked it. The air got trapped in my lungs." "Oh, really? What was her name? I don't know. Some blonde lady. She made awesome cookies." His tone was casual, but his eyes never left my face, as if he were measuring my reaction. "Why does it bother you?" "No, just asking." "And you haven't seen her in a long time?" "Nah. I saw her last Saturday. We went to her house. She has an inflatable pool." Having said that, he turned back to the TV, as if the conversation were over. A deliberate masterstroke. He knew he was hurting me, and he enjoyed it. "Last Saturday, William said he had a business meeting in Boston. He was gone all day." "How nice," I said, my voice sounding perfectly normal. "I think it's great that your father and his friends look after you." Ethan didn't answer. He had gotten what he wanted, to stick a knife in, and twist it, and I unintentionally had handed him the hilt. That evening, William called on schedule. I spoke with him first. Briefly, I told him the official version from the school without mentioning my conversation with the doctor. He sounded tired, distant. "I'll give him a good talking to when I get back," he said. "But Charlotte, it's not the end of the world. Boys will be boys. He'll grow out of it." "Of course," I replied. "You're right. He'll grow out of it." I passed the phone to Ethan, who was waiting like a hawk. He locked himself in his room to talk. His giggles, his enthusiastic "yes, Dad," seeped through the door. It was a sound he never directed at me. After a while, he came out. He tossed the phone at me without a glance. "Dad says next week he's taking me to a Yankees game even if I'm grounded. He says you can't stop him." "I can't," I said, picking up the phone. He smiled. A triumphant, cruel smile. It was William's smile when he thought he had won an argument. I waited until nightfall. When the house was quiet, I sat down again at the computer. Frank's email was already there with the contract and a preliminary report. Concise and damning. Subject 1, William Hayes. Confirmed multiple trips to Chicago for business. Also multiple trips to Queens residential area regular pattern. Afternoons every 10 to 15 days, sometimes with minor Ethan. Use of vehicle owned by Subject 2 for some trips cross-referenced with provided parking garage plate. Subject 2, Jessica Miller. Resident of Queens, NY. Works part-time as a sales clerk. No records of travel to San Diego. Medical history preliminary access. Admitted to Mount Sinai Hospital on the 11th of September 2018. Discharged the 13th of September 2018. Reason vaginal delivery. Product male 6 pounds 13 ounces. Note, same admission. Discharge dates as Subject 0 yourself, same maternity ward. Subject 3, Ethan Hayes. Confirmed at least 4 meetings with Subject 2 inches the last 2 months. Context, cordial family-like. Photo attached. I opened the photograph. It was from a week ago, taken from a distance with a telephoto lens. It showed William, Ethan, and a blonde woman in her early 30s. They were sitting on the terrace of a cafe. Ethan was eating an ice cream cone. William had his arm over the back of Jessica's chair. She was smiling, looking at Ethan with an expression I couldn't immediately define. Until I did. It was pride. Pure, simple maternal pride. I looked at the date on Jessica's hospital report. September 11. My admission date was September 2. My delivery the 12th. Her delivery probably the 11th or 12th. Her son, a healthy boy over 6.5 pounds. Mine, according to the chart, a premature boy of 4 pounds 12 ounces who needed an incubator. An incubator that I now recalled I had very limited access to for days, always accompanied by William, who told me the baby was very fragile, that it was better not to touch him much yet. There hadn't been a confusion. There had been a swap. a cold, calculated exchange executed in the chaos of a medical emergency, taking advantage of my semi-conscious state. He had brought his son, Jessica's son, and placed him in my arms. And he had taken away my baby, my daughter. Nausea rose in my throat, acidic and violent. I held it down with clenched fists. There was no time for that. No. I closed my eyes, breathing deeply. When I opened them, there was no room left for doubt or pain. Only for the truth, naked and disgusting. William had not only been unfaithful, he had stolen 8 years of my daughter's life. He had placed his offspring, his male heir, because that's what this was also about, stupid me, the inheritance, the family name, the money in my house at my expense. And he had turned my own daughter into an orphan, into a girl in a group home who fought in schoolyards because no one else would fight for her. Valerie. Her name was Valerie. I stood up. My legs held me. The world hadn't ended. It had just come into focus. Suddenly, with a blinding, brutal light. Frank had more work to do. I needed access to that hospital archive. I needed to find Dr. Reed again. I needed to see that girl Valerie. But first I had to act normal. To be the cold, distant Charlotte I had always been. I couldn't alert William. Not yet. The next day, when Ethan came down for breakfast, I was already in the kitchen dressed for the office. Your punishment stands, I said, without preamble. No console. No going out. Louisa will stay with you. I have a very busy day. He scowled but said nothing. He was too sure of his victory, of his alliance with his father. By the way, I added, picking up my coffee cup, that Yankees game with your father. Don't go bragging about it at school, even if it's a week away. It's not right to show off when you're grounded. Understood. He looked at me, surprised that I knew about the game and that I wasn't protesting openly. He nodded suspiciously. Good, I said, and left. I didn't go to the office. I went to a coffee shop downtown. And from there, I called the Sterling Academy. I asked to speak with Mr. Davies. Mrs. Hayes, good morning. Is something wrong? Yes, Mr. Davies. About yesterday's incident. The girl, Valerie. The one who defends the others. I'd like to make an anonymous donation for her education, or for whatever she needs. And if it's possible, I'd like to meet with her counselor to apologize personally on behalf of my family for my son's behavior. In private, of course. On the other end, the headmaster seemed moved. That's very generous of you, Mrs. Hayes. Honestly, the girl has a tough time. She's a fighter, but the system isn't easy. I'll give you the contact for Sister Catherine, the director of the home. She's a saint. She can arrange a discreet meeting. Thank you, Mr. Davies. And please, this is between us. I don't want Ethan to feel singled out in another way. Of course. I understand. I hung up. It wasn't generosity. It was the first stone. I was going to meet my daughter. I was going to see with my own eyes what William had stolen from me. And then stone by stone, I was going to demolish his world just as he had demolished mine. Frank Russo was on time for our meeting at the cafe on Madison Avenue. He wore a worn leather jacket and smelled of stale cigarette smoke and cheap coffee. He sat across from me without ceremony. Charlotte, he nodded. His small, shrewd eyes scanned me. You look like you've seen a ghost. Something worse, I said, sliding a thick manila envelope across the table. I need the complete delivery file. Mine and Jessica Miller's. Copies of everything. Nurses' notes, neonatology reports, signatures, everything. Frank took the envelope without opening it, weighed it in his hand, and tucked it into an inside pocket. Mount Sinai isn't a small-town clerk's office. Their data security is tight, and it's been 8 years. That's why I'm paying you. Because you know who to bribe, who to pressure, or who to hack. I don't care about the method, I just want the papers. He smiled, showing yellowish teeth. Straight to the point as always. Just like your father. Fine. You'll have it. Anything else on the woman? What do you have? Lives in a rent-stabilized apartment in Queens. Works at a perfume counter in a mall. Afternoon shifts. Legally single. No criminal record. Her son is listed as deceased at birth. He paused for effect. Interesting, isn't it? Considering there's an 8-year-old boy who looks like her and calls her auntie in photos. A deceased son. A death certificate to erase the trail of the boy now living in my house. The nausea returned, but I choked it down with a sip of ice water. Go on. Your husband visits her every couple of weeks sometimes with the kid. He pays her rent. He has a credit card in her name, discreet but not that discreet. She's not the first kept mistress in New York. He shrugged. The strange part is the kid. Usually men run from responsibility, not take it on and bring it into their own home. Unless, he looked at me intently. Unless the kid is the real time bomb. I didn't answer. My silence was confirmation enough. Frank whistled softly. Charlotte, this is big. That's why you're well paid. I want to know every step William takes, every call if you can, every wire transfer. And I need access to his computer, his cloud accounts. That's trickier and more expensive. I already told you money is not an issue. Do it. And do it fast. He stood up. You'll have the hospital papers in a week. The rest will follow. Be careful with the kid. Children see and hear more than we think. After he left, I sat there staring at my reflection in the window pane. An elegant pale woman with dark eyes circled by shadows. The owner of a perfect facade hiding a viper's nest. That night at home, the tension was palpable. Ethan roamed the house like a caged tiger sulking over his punishment. I was working in my study, but my attention was tuned to the sounds of the house. Around 9, I heard his voice upstairs. He was on the phone. From the tone, it was with William. I stood up silently and approached the half-open door to his room, spying on my own son, the height of family pathology. Yeah, Dad. She's being a total pain. Won't let me do anything. Yeah, I know I have to put up with it. But when are you coming back? Can we go to Aunt Jessica's again? Yeah, with the pool. And the dog. Of course I won't tell her. She's a bore. She's not Mom. The word resonated in my head, cold and sharp. He knew. He had always known. And William encouraged it. Yeah, I love you so much, Dad. I love you. Not her. He hung up. I stood on the other side of the door, my heart beating with a slow, glacial rhythm. There was no pain anymore, just an absolute certainty, and with it a decision. The next day, while Ethan was still asleep, I called Sister Catherine, the director of St. Jude's Home for Children. Her voice on the phone was tired but kind. Yes, mister. Davies told me about you, Mrs. Hayes. It's very generous. Valerie is a special girl, very tough on the outside but with a huge heart. She defends the little ones like a lioness. I'd like to make an anonymous donation for her care, and perhaps meet her. To apologize in private for what my son did. I don't want her to feel pressured. Sister Catherine hesitated. It's complicated. She's very mistrustful of adults, especially well-dressed ones. There was a pause. But maybe, if you came as a volunteer to help the younger children with their homework, she's always protecting the little ones. You could see her talk to her in a natural context without pressure. Perfect. When can I start? And so 2 afternoons later, I found myself sitting in a worn-out study hall at the home, helping a group of 6- and 7-year-olds with addition and subtraction. The smell of bleach and mashed vegetables hung in the air. And there, in a corner, watching my every move with suspicion, was Valerie. She was smaller than I remembered from the headmaster's office, thin with dark brown hair pulled back in a frayed ponytail. She wore old jeans and a sweatshirt with the logo of some unknown sports team, but it was her eyes that stopped me. Large, a grayish-green, framed by thick lashes. They weren't William's. They were mine. The same eyes I saw every morning in the mirror. A stab of recognition so physical I had to grip the edge of the table went through my chest. She watched me as I explained a sum to a little girl. Her eyes missed nothing. When I finished, she approached, not with shyness but with the caution of a wild animal. You're his mother, right? Her voice was husky, direct, unfiltered. The children around me stifled their giggles. Sister Catherine at the back of the room made a move to protest, but I held up a hand. Yes, I answered with the same frankness. I'm Ethan's mother, and I've come to apologize for his behavior and to offer my help. If you need it. She frowned as if my answer didn't fit her script. I don't need your help or your money. What I need is for your son to stop being a jerk to my friends. Valerie, your language, murmured Sister Catherine from a distance. She's right, I said, ignoring the nun. My daughter was right. My son is a jerk. And I'm going to see to it that he stops. But that doesn't help your friends today. I've spoken with the school administration. They're putting an additional monitor in the yard, and there will be real consequences for bullies, including Ethan. Valerie looked at me suspiciously. Why would you do that? To clear your conscience. No, I said, and for the first time I let a glimpse of my true self, of my rage and my pain show in my eyes. She saw it and took a half step back, surprised. It's not about conscience. It's about justice. She held my gaze for a long moment. Then, without a word, she turned and went to help a small boy who was struggling with a subtraction problem. She spoke to him with a patience she hadn't shown me. Look, Javier, don't just guess the numbers. Start over. I'll help you. I stood there watching her. The way she bent over the notebook, the furrow of concentration between her brows, even the way she bit her lower lip when she was thinking they were small gestures that belonged to me. They were mine. As I was leaving, Sister Catherine approached me. She has a hard shell, Mrs. Hayes. Life hasn't been easy for her. But she has a big heart. She's a natural leader. For better or for worse. Her parents, I asked, my voice tight, abandoned at birth, on the steps of a health clinic with a note with her date of birth. Nothing more. 8 years in the system. Sister Catherine sighed. She's very smart. Too smart for her own good sometimes. The 12th of September 2018. The date burned in my mind. The same as my delivery. The same as the date on the death certificate of Jessica's supposed son. Thank you, Sister Catherine. I'll be back next week if you'll have me. You're always welcome. That night, Frank's report arrived in my secure inbox. Brief, concise, devastating. Attachments. Medical history, Charlotte Hayes. Medical history, Jessica Miller. Similarities, same ward. Same night shift. Discrepancies. Nurse on duty for both charts. Monica Salas, currently retired, lives in Florida. On-call pediatrician for Hayes newborn Dr. Soto. For Miller newborn Dr. Gomez. Handwritten note on Miller chart. Weight 6 pounds 13 ounces. Healthy male. Released to Father William V. Crossed out, replaced with neonatal death, released to funeral services. Illegible signature. Handwritten note on Hayes chart. Weight 4 pounds 12 ounces. Premature. Sex male. Ink different from the rest. Male written over a smudge. Scratch out. Original delivery signed by Dr. Evelyn Reed. Subsequent note adding, product male, possibly by resident. There were photos of the documents. The cross out on Jessica's chart was crude, blatant. The word male on mine over the smudge looked like a man's handwriting. Williams. I opened another file. Recent photographs. William leaving a bank. William and Jessica entering a cheap restaurant laughing. Ethan between them wearing a baseball cap holding Jessica's hand. And then the crown jewel. A screenshot of a text chat obtained God knows how between William and Jessica from 3 days ago. William, I can't this weekend. She has a work dinner. Jessica. She always has something. Ethan keeps asking for you. Says the witch is acting weirder than ever. William, relax, my love. Patience. Just a little longer. When we have everything secured, the 3 of us will go away far from here, from her. Jessica, and the girl thing, William. It's not our problem. It was for the best for everyone. Not our problem. My daughter, my Valerie. Not our problem. I closed the laptop. The room was silent. Downstairs I could hear the television. Ethan was watching some stupid show. My son. Their son. I got up and went downstairs. I stood in front of the sofa. He didn't even look at me. Turn it off, I said. What? He rolled his eyes. Turn off the television. Now. Something in my voice, a tone I had never used with him, made him obey. He fumbled for the remote, and the screen went black. Then he looked at me, defiant. So, I said, articulating each word with glacial clarity, your father takes you to see his friend a lot. To see Jessica. His bravado cracked for an instant. He quickly recovered with a sneer. So what? She's more fun than you. And she cooks better. Of course. Married men's mistresses usually try harder. He paled. What? What are you saying, that Jessica isn't Aunt Jessica? She's your father's mistress, and you know it. I took a step closer. He shrank back on the sofa. How long have you known? Forever, did he tell you? That your mother was a witch, and that your real family, the one that really matters, was him and Jessica. Ethan jumped to his feet, his face red with fury and something else. Fear. Shut up. You don't know anything. Dad and I are a team. You just give us money and make our lives miserable. Did he tell you that my money was his? That all of this, I made a sweeping gesture with my hand, encompassing the house, the paintings, the life I had built would be yours one day, that you just had to put up with me a little longer. Yes, and it's true. Dad deserves everything. You're a cold-hearted bitch, he screamed, tears of rage in his eyes. But it was no longer the scream of a spoiled child. It was the tantrum of a discovered conspirator. I smiled, a smile that didn't reach my eyes. Thank you, Ethan. for saving me any lingering doubt. I turned and walked up the stairs. His screams followed me. I'm gonna tell Dad. He's going to be so mad. You'll see. Do it, I murmured to myself. When I reached my study, I closed the door and leaned my back against it. The trembling I felt wasn't from fear. It was from pure, contained energy. Rage converted into strength. Now I knew everything. Or almost everything. I knew the what. I knew the who. I just needed the how and the finale. The revenge. The phone rang. It was William. Ethan must have called him immediately. I swiped to accept. Yes, honey, I said in my flattest voice. What did you say to Ethan? His voice was a hiss of contained fury. He's a wreck. He says you told him some terrible things. Just the truth, William. I told him Jessica isn't his aunt. She's your mistress, and that he's known for years. I paused, letting the silence on the other end fill with his panic. Do you think it's okay for an 8-year-old boy to lie to his mother every day? To despise his home while he's out with his father and his whore? Charlotte, I don't know what you're talking about, I swear. Jessica is just a childhood friend. Ethan exaggerates. William, I interrupted, and the ice in my voice must have cut through the hundreds of miles between us. Stop lying. I have the hospital records, Jessica's and mine, with the crossouts, with your signature or something very much like it where you wrote male over the sex of my daughter. The silence was absolute. I could only hear his breathing getting faster, shallower. Charlotte, listen. No, I said calmly. You listen. You will be back in New York tomorrow, or I will initiate divorce proceedings for adultery, family abandonment, and fraud tomorrow morning. And with them, the hospital papers will go to the district attorney's office to investigate a posset of identity substitution or worse. No, you can't. Oh, I can. And I will. Unless we talk. Tomorrow. In my house. At 8 p.m. You and me. And then I added, lowering my voice to a lethal whisper, you will tell me exactly how it happened. Every detail. Or, I will destroy you. I hung up before he could respond. I turned off my phone. In the next room, Ethan had stopped screaming. There was only a choked sob of rage and helplessness. I didn't cry. I took out Frank's report and started planning my next move. The game had changed. Now I was the one holding the cards. And the queen, though she had been lost for 8 years, was about to be brought back to the board. William returned to New York the following afternoon. He didn't come home. He sent a curt text, arriving at 8. We'll talk. I ignored it. I had more important plans. Sister Catherine was waiting for me at the door of the group home. Her smile was tired but sincere. Valerie's in the backyard, helping the little ones with a soccer game. It's her favorite time of day. And how did she react when she knew I was coming back? The nun made a gesture of uncertainty. She asked if you were rich. I said yes. She said, rich people usually have weird intentions. But she didn't refuse to see you. That's something. She led me through a clean but worn hallway, its walls painted with children's drawings. Laughter and shouts drifted from the yard. As I stepped outside, I saw her. Valerie was wearing the same torn sneakers, the same faded jeans. She was directing a chaotic game among 5, and 6-year-olds with the authority of a professional coach. Iker, on the right. No, not like that pass to Laura. Come on, you can do it. Her husky, clear voice cut through the air. I watched her agile, decisive movements. When one little boy tripped and started to cry, she was the first to reach him. She crouched down to his level, not with coddling, but with a firm pat on the back. Come on, man. It was nothing. See, not even any blood. Get up. You have to score a goal to make up for the scare. The boy stopped crying, wiped his eyes with the back of his hand, and nodded with renewed determination. Valerie gave him a wink, a small, quick gesture that made my heart stop. It was my gesture, the same one I used to make when I was a girl to cheer up my younger brother after a fall. Sister Catherine cleared her throat. Valerie looked up, her grayish-green gaze. I now knew so well landing on me. The fun vanished from her face, replaced by a cautious reserve. She said something to the kids and walked over, wiping her hands on her jeans. Hi, she said without preamble. Hi, Valerie. How's the game going? She shrugged. We're winning. We always win. She looked at Sister Catherine. Sister, the faucet in the boys' bathroom is dripping again. I put a bucket under it, but it's filling up. I'll call the plumber, dear. You don't have to. If you can get me a wrench and a new washer, I can fix it. I watched Mr. Manuel do it the other day. Sister Catherine rolled her eyes affectionately. Valerie, you can't fix everything yourself. Why not? I know how. Her tone wasn't arrogant. It was practical. A statement of fact. She turned to me. Did you bring the books? Sister said. You were bringing books. Yes, they're in the car. Adventure books, animal books, books about whatever you want. The animal ones are fine. And mechanics, if you have any. Or soccer. She said the last part almost reluctantly, as if revealing a personal interest were a concession. I'll go get them. As I walked to my car parked on the adjacent street, I felt her gaze on my back, a strange, challenging, and protective sensation all at once. As I opened the trunk to take out the boxes of new books, I'd bought a movement at the end of the street caught my eye. A black Honda Williams. No, it was the other one, the one with Jessica's license plate parked on a corner half hidden behind a van. My body tensed before my mind could fully process it. William got out of the driver's side. He was wearing jeans and a casual jacket clothes he never wore in New York with me. He went to the back door and opened it. Ethan jumped out with a wide smile. Then from the passenger door, a young blonde woman in a simple dress got out. Jessica. The three of them were less than 50 yards from me, but their backs were turned. They were looking toward the entrance of a playground across the street. They couldn't see me. I saw William put a hand on Jessica's back, an intimate, possessive gesture. I saw Ethan take Jessica's hand and pull her toward the playground, laughing. I saw Jessica's wide, carefree smile as she looked at Ethan. A mother's smile. The smile she never gave to Valerie. The smile that should have been mine. A wave of cold so intense it almost burned ran through me from head to toe. It wasn't jealousy. It was pure, crystalline, lethal rage. There was the living proof of his betrayal, strolling with my stolen son, while my real daughter was learning to be a plumber at age 8 in a group home. Ethan pointed at something in the park and ran toward it. Jessica laughed and went after him. William hung back for a moment, pulling out his phone. He looked at it and frowned. My call, my threat would be there. He put the phone in his pocket and followed the other two, but his stride was no longer so carefree. I grabbed the boxes of books with hands that didn't tremble. I slammed the trunk shut. When I turned, I met Valerie's gaze. She had come out to the home's gate and was watching the same scene. Her eyes went from the fake family in the park to me standing by the car with the boxes. Her expression was unreadable. She walked closer. Is that them? She asked, no preamble. Yes. The boy is the one who hits my friends, and the others, his father, and his father's friend. I couldn't say his mother. Not in front of Valerie. She nodded as if she'd confirmed a theory. They look happy, she said, her tone flat, with no trace of self-pity. Just stating a fact. Looks can be deceiving, Valerie. The words escaped me, loaded with a meaning she couldn't possibly understand. She looked me straight in the eye. You don't look happy. Not today, I admitted. Today I am not. She held my gaze for another second, then nodded toward the boxes. Do you need help with that? I can manage. But she had already taken the smaller box. Come on. The little kids are getting impatient. And without another glance toward the park, she turned and walked back into the home. I followed her, the weight of the books and the infinitely greater weight of the truth crushing me. In the yard, the children descended on the boxes with glee. Valerie organized them efficiently. Okay, one at a time, Aitor, you hand them out. The big one goes to you since you're the strongest. I stayed on the sidelines watching her. My daughter. A leader, a survivor with hands skilled enough to fix faucets and a heart that burned to protect the weak. Everything Ethan was not. Everything they had stolen. Sister Catherine came over to me. Everything all right, Mrs. Hayes, you look... I'm fine, Sister Catherine. Just thoughtful. I paused. Has Valerie had a lot of trouble at school for fighting? I mean, the nun sighed. Some. Always for the same reason. She defends those who can't defend themselves. The bullies don't usually forgive her for that. But she doesn't know how to back down. It's her greatest virtue and her greatest danger. She looked at me curiously. Is your son still causing problems? My son, I said, choosing my words with infinite care is the result of a very poor upbringing and even worse influences. That is going to change. Sister Catherine nodded sympathetically. Sometimes we parents don't see what's right in front of us. Or we see what we want to see, not what is. That, I whispered, looking at Valerie, who was now reading the back cover of a book about dinosaurs to a little boy, is a great truth. I left before nightfall. As I walked out, the Honda was gone. The street was empty, but the image of the three of them, a fake, happy family, was burned into my mind. At 8 o'clock, sharp William walked into the house. He smelled of cold air and lies. Ethan, who had returned earlier and was in the living room, jumped off the sofa. Dad William hugged him, but the embrace was quick distracted. His eyes were searching for me, standing at the foot of the stairs. "Ethan, go to your room," William said, not taking his eyes off me. "But Dad, now Ethan." William's voice, usually soft and persuasive, had an edge of poorly disguised panic. Ethan shot me a venomous look and ran up the stairs 2 at a time. We heard his door slam. William and I were alone in the foyer. The light from the chandelier was too bright, too clear. "Well," he said, unbuttoning his coat with nervous movements. "I'm here." "What's this drama, Charlotte? What are you up to?" "This isn't drama, William. It's a reckoning." I walked into the living room. He followed. I sat in an armchair. He remained standing like a scolded child. "Sit down." He perched on the edge of the sofa across from me. "Those papers could be forged. Or that doctor is confused. It's been 8 years. I saw Jessica today, William. With Ethan, in the park next to the St. Jude's Home for Children. What a coincidence, don't you think?" I let the words fall slowly. "And I saw my daughter, Valerie." The color drained from his face. I don't know what you're talking about." "Stop lying," my voice erupted, cold and sharp as broken glass. For the first time, I raised it. He flinched. "I've seen the records. Jessica's where it says her healthy baby boy was released to Father William V., crossed out and changed to deceased. And mine where someone wrote male over the sex of my baby. I have photos of the three of you. I have the text messages. Just a little longer, my love. We'll go away far from her." Does that ring a bell? He buried his face in his hands. "Charlotte, please. Please, what, forgive you. Forget that you stole my daughter and threw her away like an unwanted puppy. That I spent 8 years raising, feeding, and clothing your mistress's son while you made me believe he was mine. While you poisoned his mind against me, I stood up unable to stay seated. The rage that had been simmering for days boiled under my skin, but my voice dropped again to a dangerous whisper. "Tell me, William. Tell me how you did it. Everything. Or I swear to you by whatever you hold most dear, which in this case seems to be that boy upstairs, I will ruin you. Jessica will go to prison for complicity in kidnapping, or worse. You'll go down for fraud for whatever I can find. And Ethan will go back to his mother. To Queens. Without a penny of the money you thought you were going to steal from me." He raised his head. His eyes were bloodshot. "No. Don't touch Ethan. And why not? He's not my son. He's yours. He's Jessica's. He's the time bomb you planted in my house to inherit my money. Well, guess what? The bomb is about to go off in your face." He collapsed onto the sofa, defeated. The facade of the confident man the seducer crumbled, revealing a frightened, miserable creature. It was her idea, at first. Jessica was pregnant. I had just met you. You had money status. It was the opportunity of a lifetime. But Jessica, she insisted. She said her son deserved this life, not the poor one we could give him. And yours was a girl. Weak, sickly. What was I going to do with a girl? Every word was a knife. I listened to them all. Go on. We put something in your food to raise your blood pressure. Just enough to induce labor at the same time as Jessica's. She checked in under a fake name. I paid a nurse, Monica. Not much. Just to look the other way to switch the baby bracelets in the confusion after the doctor left. Your baby, the girl, she cried a lot, but she was fine. Jessica's... our boy. He was strong, healthy. He was perfect. His voice took on a strange tone of pride as he said it, and nausea churned in my stomach. The nurse put your girl in the bassinet that was supposed to go to the morgue, the one for unnamed infants. And she put my son in yours. It was easy. You were unconscious. When you woke up, I told you our son was sick, that you couldn't see him much. And you were so weak, so confused. You accepted it. And my daughter, I asked, my voice now so soft it was terrifying. You left her there, in a bassinet for the dead. No, I got her out. The next night, I wrapped her in a blanket and left her on the steps of a health clinic far from here, with a note. We didn't kill her, Charlotte. We left her for someone. She could have had a good life. In a group home, I interrupted, fighting for every scrap. And the nurse, Dr. Reed. The doctor left for the UK the next day. She didn't suspect a thing. The nurse retired shortly after, moved to Florida. Everything was covered. It was going to be perfect. He would be our son, inherit everything. And Jessica and I, when the time was right, when he was older or you were away, we would leave with the money. Ethan would be with his real mother. And you would have your money and your independence just like you always wanted. The monumental villainy of his plan, its calculated pettiness, took my breath away for a moment. Not from pain, but from disgust. And Ethan, knowing everything, since when William looked down, he always knew. We told him you were a wicked stepmother, that he had to pretend to behave with you to get the prize at the end, that you didn't really love him, that his real mom was Jessica, and one day we would all live together happily with all your money. He started to sob. Loud, selfish sobs. I'm sorry, Charlotte. I'm so sorry. It was a mistake. We can fix this. I can give you compensation. Compensation, I repeated. I walked over to him. He was kneeling in front of the sofa, a broken man. William, there is no amount of money in the world that can compensate for 8 years of my daughter's life. Not 8 minutes. What are you going to do? He whispered, terrified. I straightened up, looking down at him. First, you are going to sign a divorce settlement waiving everything. Custody of Ethan, any alimony, any joint property. Everything in my name stays with me. Everything in your name, which isn't much you can keep. I don't want you saying I left you on the street. He nodded eagerly. Yes, anything. Second, you are going to confess all of this in writing with details signed before a notary. A document that I will keep to ensure you never ever try to come near me or my daughter again. Your daughter, Valerie, my daughter. Third, you are leaving this house. Now, take what's yours and go. You can go to Queens. You can go live with Jessica and your son. The life you deserve with the money you deserve. Far away from me. But Ethan, I said, and for the first time, a flicker of something like emotion, but it was pure, poetic justice, crossed me. He is your son, and Jessica's. He stays with me. For now, because the law will likely grant me provisional custody as his putative mother. But don't worry, I'm not going to spoil him. I'm going to raise him exactly as I have until now, with discipline, with high expectations, and with the absolute certainty that he is not my son. And as soon as I can, once the divorce is final, and I have your confession, I will give him a choice. He can stay here under my rules, with no inheritance, no privileges, like an unwelcome guest. Or he can go with you and Jessica to start from scratch in Queens. The prospect of having to care for a spoiled, arrogant child without my money, my house, my influence made William turn even paler. It was a perfect punishment for all three of them. You can't be that cruel, he whimpered. Oh, yes, I can, I smiled. You just taught me how. Now get out. The notary will be here at 9 a.m. tomorrow with the agreement and your confession prepared. If you don't sign, or if you try to alert Jessica or make any funny moves, the hospital papers and the photos will go to the police and the newspapers. Understood, he nodded, defeated. Get out of my house. He staggered to his feet. He went upstairs, presumably to get some things. I stayed in the living room listening to the sounds from above. 10 minutes later, he came down with a small suitcase. He didn't look at me. He walked out the front door. The sound of it closing was final. Shortly after, Ethan came running down the stairs. He looked frightened. Where's Dad? He's gone. Why did he leave? I looked at him. The boy I had raised. The imposter. The enemy in my house. He's gone to Jessica's house, I said coolly. To your real mother's. He doesn't have to pretend here anymore. Ethan's eyes widened. What? No, he wouldn't leave without me. He promised me. He promised you a life that didn't belong to you, I interrupted. That life is over. Things are going to change now, Ethan. Drastically. You decide if you can live with that change or if you want to go with them. But think it over carefully. There won't be a private school there. No new consoles, no trips. There will be a small apartment, a mother who works as a sales clerk, and a father with no steady job and a lot of resentment. His face reflected first disbelief, then panic, and finally impotent rage. "You're a witch! You threw him out! You threw him out because of me!" "No," I said, suddenly exhausted but unyielding. "You all threw yourselves out. Now go to your room. We'll talk tomorrow." He stood his ground, trembling with fury. For a moment, I thought he might rush me, but he didn't. He just shot me one last look of pure hatred and ran up the stairs, slamming his door again. I sank into the armchair. The silence of the house was deafening. I had won the battle. I had evicted the enemy. I had reclaimed my territory. But the war for my daughter, for my life to undo 8 years of lies, was just beginning. And now, in the opposing trench, it wasn't just William. It was Jessica. And it was Ethan, an 8-year-old boy who hated me and who now had every reason in the world to do so. The next day, as the notary was on his way, I looked out the window. I needed a plan, not just to defend myself, but to attack, to reclaim what was mine. And for the first time in 8 years, I knew exactly what that was. A girl with grayish-green eyes and hands capable of fixing faucets who lived in a group home and didn't know how to back down. Her name was Valerie. And she was my daughter. The notary left at 10 in the morning with the signed documents. William had signed everything with a trembling hand, barely looking at the papers. His detailed confession, drafted by my lawyer from my account and signed by him before witnesses, was now in my safe. It was my insurance policy. Ethan had locked himself in his room. I told Louisa not to take him breakfast. If he was hungry, he could come down. He didn't. I didn't have time for his tantrums. I had a more important appointment. Frank had given me Jessica's address, a block of subsidized housing in Queens. The building lobby had graffiti. Several of the mailboxes were dented. I took the elevator, which smelled of fried food and cheap disinfectant, to the 4th floor. I knocked on the door of 4C. I waited. I heard hurried footsteps, then a, "Who is it?" The voice was female, young, tinged with anxiety. "It's Charlotte Hayes, William's wife. We need to talk." A heavy silence. Then the sound of a chain being unlatched and the door opened a few inches. Jessica appeared in the crack. She was younger than she looked in the photos, but her eyes were swollen, her face bare of makeup. She was wearing a worn-out sweatsuit. She looked at me with a mixture of fear and defiance. "What do you want?" William told me. "He said not to come near you." "William isn't giving orders anymore," I said, and without waiting for an invitation, I gently pushed the door open and walked in. The apartment was small but clean and tidy. Cheap furniture, brightly colored cushions, photos of Ethan everywhere. On the living room coffee table, a photo of the 3 of them, William, Jessica, and Ethan, smiling at an amusement park. My fake family. Jessica closed the door and stood with her back to it as if trapped. "What did you come here for?" "To humiliate me? I know you have everything. The big house, the money. I only have this." Her tone was pitiful, but there was a spark of resentment. "I didn't come to talk about what I have, Jessica. I came to talk about what you took from me." I took out my phone and showed her the photo of the hospital records, zoomed in on the page with her name and the crossed-out notation. "Tell me about the 12th of September 2018. She went pale. That's old. It was a tragedy. I lost my baby." "No," I interrupted with glacial calm. "You didn't lose your baby. Your baby is alive. He lives in my house. His name is Ethan. And my baby, my daughter, lives in a group home. Her name is Valerie." Jessica collapsed onto a sofa as if her legs had turned to jelly. "No. William said you would never find out. That everything was taken care of." William lied. Just like he lied to me. Just like he probably lied to both of us. He told me it was a plan to give your son a future. "What did he tell you? That I was a cold witch who didn't deserve to be a mother. That together you would be a family when you got my money." She didn't answer, covering her face with her hands. "You don't understand. We were young, we were scared. William said it was the only way." "Stop saying it was William's idea," I snapped, losing my patience for a second. "It was both of your ideas. You agreed to it. You let them steal my daughter and throw her away like a stray dog. You enjoyed watching your son live in opulence, calling me Mom, while you poisoned him against me. Or are you going to tell me you didn't know Ethan despises me?" She raised her head, and this time the resentment shone clearly in her eyes. "And why shouldn't he despise you? You never loved him. You were always so cold. Distant." William told me. "Ethan needed affection, and I gave it to him in secret. I'm his mother." "Yes, you are," I conceded, and she flinched. "You are his mother, and you should have taken care of him, not pawned him off on another woman with a criminal lie. You didn't want to be a mother. You wanted to be William's kept woman. You wanted the reward without the effort. That's not true. I love him, she screamed, now crying with rage. I love him more than anything. That's why I agreed. Because he deserved more than this. She made a desperate gesture encompassing the tiny apartment. He deserved your house, your school, your future. Not this misery. And my daughter, I said, my voice dropping to a sharp whisper. What did Valerie deserve? Misery. Jessica fell silent, staring into space. She was a weak baby. William said she wouldn't survive, that it was better this way. Better for whom, Jessica? For her, or for your conscience? I stepped closer. She shrank back. Tell me how it worked. The food. The nurse. Was that your idea? She shook her head frantically. No, the food was William. He had access. I just told him I was scared. That we couldn't support a baby. That something had to happen. She swallowed hard. The nurse Monica was a friend's cousin. William gave her money. Not a lot. She just had to switch the bracelets in the confusion. After the night shift, when no one was around. It was easy, she said. Each word confirmed the horror. And then, you left the hospital with your discharge papers. And my daughter, she closed her eyes. William took her out in a blanket. He said he would leave her in a safe place. A convent, he said. I didn't want to know anymore. I had my boy. Our boy. He was all that mattered. And never in 8 years did you think about what happened to her. You never had nightmares. You never wondered if she was alive, if she was being mistreated, if she was hungry. Her silence was the answer. She hadn't thought about it. Or if she had suppressed it. Finally, she shook her head. What do you want me to say? That, I'm sorry. Fine. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for the girl. But not for Ethan. For Ethan, I'd do it all over again. He has the life he's supposed to have. The monumental selfishness of her statement left me breathless. There was no real remorse, only self-pity and justification for her crime. Fine, I said, putting my phone away. Thank you for your semi-sincerity. Now listen to me carefully, Jessica. William has signed his confession. He's giving up everything. He's out of my life. Ethan legally is still my son. For now. She jumped to her feet. No, you can't keep him. He's mine. He is yours, I agreed. And you can have him when I say so. And on my terms. What terms? She whispered, terrified. For now, Ethan stays with me. You will not try to see him or contact him. If you do, this entire story with your name and photos will go to the press and the D.A.'s Office for Child Abduction, Identity Substitution, and God knows what else. You would go to jail, Jessica, and Ethan would be left as the son of a felon in the child protective system. Is that what you want? She shook her head, crying silently, now defeated. No, please. William will probably move in with you, I assume. To this little apartment. To try to find a job. You'll have to manage. And Ethan, when I decide he has learned his lesson, when he has paid even a minimal part of his arrogance, he can choose. To stay with me without an inheritance, without luxuries, just like any other child. Or to go with you to start from scratch. That will be his choice. But it won't be easy for any of you. That's so cruel, she whimpered. I learned from the best, I said, heading for the door. I paused with my hand on the knob. One more thing, Jessica. My daughter, Valerie. If you go near her, if you even look at her, you won't just go to jail. I will personally make sure you don't see the light of day again. Do you understand? She nodded, without looking up from the floor. I left the apartment. In the elevator, the smell of fried food turned my stomach. It wasn't disgust with the place. It was disgust with the human misery I had just witnessed. When I got out onto the street, I took a deep breath. I had all the pieces. William's confession. Jessica's corroboration. The documents. It was time to change strategy. The defense was over. It was time for the offense. And the offense would start where it should with Valerie. But first, I had to deal with the immediate problem at home. With Ethan. When I returned, the new housekeeper, Pilar, was waiting anxiously in the foyer. Mrs. Hayes, Ethan hasn't eaten. He won't come out of his room. And he's been calling his father on the landline, I think. He was talking very quietly, but he was crying. Leave him, Pilar. He'll come down when he's really hungry. I went up to my study. I had work to do. Wires to cancel William's supplementary credit cards, the joint accounts. Lawyers to call. and a plan to map out. Around 3 in the afternoon, I heard footsteps in the hall. Then the door to my study opened without a knock. Ethan stood there. His eyes were swollen and red, but he wasn't crying anymore. His expression was one of cold, concentrated rage. "You sent my dad away," he said without preamble. "Your father left of his own free will. To live with Jessica. With your mother. You are not my mother," he spat the words. "Finally, something we agree on," I said without looking up from my computer. "Biologically, I'm not. Legally, for the moment I am. So as long as you live under my roof, you will follow my rules. I'm not going to obey you. Then there will be consequences. Starting with this." I pulled his console and his phone from a drawer. "These are no longer yours. They are things I bought for the son I thought was mine. Since you are not, I am taking them away. Your clothes, your school, the food, I pay for all of it. It's all a loan, and loans can be called in." He looked at me horrified. "You can't." "Want to test me?" I looked at him directly. "Do you want me to call a taxi right now and take you to Queens? To that small apartment of your mother's? With no console, no phone, sharing a room, going to a public school? Because I can do it. Your father can't stop me. I have his signed confession. He gave up everything. For the first time, I saw fear break through his rage. The fear of losing everything he knew, everything he considered his by right. "Why? Why do you hate me so much?" he asked, his voice trembling slightly. "I don't hate you, Ethan," I said, and it was true. Hate required an emotional involvement I no longer felt for him. "You're a child. A spoiled, entitled child, the product of despicable parents. You are their victim, just as I am. But you are also their accomplice. You knew the truth, and instead of compassion, you chose contempt. So don't expect compassion from me. You have 2 options here. You stay and you follow my rules to the letter. You study, you help around the house, you treat everyone with respect, and you stop bullying anyone. Or you leave for the real world. You choose." He stood, motionless, processing. His options were terrible, and he knew it. With me, it would be a life of discipline and coldness, but with comforts. With them, it would be chaos, poverty, and probably mutual resentment. "I'm going to talk to my dad," he said, with what little authority he had left. "Do it. Use the landline in the living room. You have 5 minutes. Then you decide." He left the room. I heard him go downstairs and pick up the phone. I didn't listen to the conversation. I didn't care. 10 minutes later, he came back up. He stood in the doorway. He looked smaller, younger. Defeated. "I'm staying," he muttered. "I didn't hear you." "I'm staying," he shouted. And then, as if something inside him broke, he added, "But I hate you. I will always hate you." "That's your right," I said, turning back to my screen. "The rules start now. Pilar will give you a list of chores. Dinner is at 9. If you're not there, you don't eat. And tomorrow you go back to school with a public apology written and read by you to those girls you bullied. And to Valerie. If you don't do it, the taxi to Queens will be waiting for you at dismissal." This time, he didn't answer. He turned and left. His footsteps, once loud and defiant, were now slow and heavy. I sighed. A battle won, but the war continued. And the most important part, the only part that truly mattered, was about to begin. The next day, after making sure Ethan had gone to school with the written apology in his backpack, under the threat of Frank, who was watching him discreetly, I drove to the group home. This time I wasn't carrying books. I was carrying something more. Sister Catherine met me with a smile. "Valerie is in the workshop learning to repair bicycles with a volunteer. She's incredible with her hands. May I see her?" "In private, if possible." The nun nodded and led me to a small office. "I'll send for her." I was left alone looking at the shelves of files and the children's drawings on the walls. A few minutes later, Valerie came in. She was wearing work pants stained with grease and wiping her hands on a rag. When she saw me, she stopped short. "Again?" she asked, but without open hostility. "Just curiosity." "Yes. Again. Can I talk to you? Can we sit?" She hesitated, then nodded, and sat on the edge of a chair across from me. She watched me with her clear, attentive eyes. "Valerie," I began, and I could feel my pulse quicken. This was the most important conversation of my life. "I'm going to tell you a story. A very ugly story. And then I'm going to ask you a question. You don't have to answer now. I just want you to listen." She frowned but nodded. "Okay." I took a deep breath, and I told her. Everything. Without sugarcoating it. The pregnancy, the betrayal, the baby swap, the abandonment. I talked about William, about Jessica, about Ethan. I talked about the doctor who remembered a baby girl. I talked about the hospital records. I didn't show her photos, just the words. When I got to the part where they left her wrapped in a blanket on the steps of a clinic, I saw her eyes widen, but they didn't fill with tears. Just with a deepening understanding and an anger that was beginning to burn inside her. When I finished, the silence in the room was thick. She was staring straight ahead, but she wasn't seeing me. She was processing. So she said, finally, her voice strangely serene, "Ethan isn't your son? He's their son." "Yes, and I'm your daughter." It wasn't a question. It was a statement that fit all the pieces of her life. "Yes, I'm your mother, Valerie, and I lost you for 8 years because of horrible people. And I am sorry. I am sorrier than words can ever say." She bit her lip, looking down at her grease-stained hands. "So, why are you telling me now? So I'll come live with you in your big house?" "No," I said, and the surprise on her face was genuine. "No, Valerie. I'm not going to force you to do anything. I'm not even asking you to call me Mom. I haven't earned that. I just want you to know the truth. And I want to offer you something. A chance." "What kind of chance?" she asked suspiciously. "The chance to get to know me at your own pace. For me to get to know you. For me to be, if you want, a part of your life. To help you. To give you what you need to have the future you want. School, whatever. And if one day you want to live with me, the door will be open. But maybe you won't. Maybe you'll prefer to stay here with Sister Catherine and your friends. And I will understand that. I will respect it." She was silent for a long time. Then she looked up. There were tears in her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. "The other day at the park. You saw them. The 3 of them. And me with the books." "Yes. It must have hurt." "Yes. A lot." She nodded. She got up and walked to the window, looking out at the playground. "It doesn't hurt me," she said almost to herself. "I don't know them." She turned back to me. "Him," she said, referring to Ethan. "Yeah, he's a jerk. But I get it a little more now. He must be scared." The compassion in her words, directed even at the one who had scorned her, broke my heart. She was more of a person at 8 years old than William and Jessica combined. "And you," she asked, "what are you going to do with them? With your husband and that woman?" "I've already done it," I said. "I've thrown them out of my life. Ethan is staying for now, under my conditions, and they are left with their truth and with the consequences." She nodded as if in approval. Then she came closer. She didn't hug me, didn't touch me, just stood there a few feet away. "I'll think about it," she said. "About getting to know each other. I'm not promising anything. I'm not asking you to promise anything," I whispered, emotion tightening my throat. "Just, thank you for listening." She turned to leave. At the door, she stopped without turning back. "Next time you come," she said, "can you bring a mechanic's book? About engines. A real one." A smile. The first real smile in days crossed my face. "Yes, Valerie. A real one. I promise." She left. I stayed there in the small office, my heart pounding with a mixture of pain, hope, and a fierce determination. I had found my daughter, and she was a lioness. Now I just had to earn the right to walk beside her, and in the process make sure that the people who had separated us paid the price for every single lost day. The following weeks were an exercise in a double life. On one hand, the Park Avenue townhouse, a silent battlefield. On the other, the group home, a fragile ground for rapprochement. Ethan complied. He came down for breakfast on time, ate in silence under my watchful eye, and went to school with a backpack full of homework and resentment. The public apology, Mr. Davies informed me by phone, had been an inaudible, rage-filled mumble directed at the girls he bullied, including Valerie. But at least he had done it. Valerie, according to Sister Catherine, didn't care. "The words of a liar are worthless," she'd told her. "What matters is that he doesn't touch anyone again." With Valerie, I kept my promise. I returned to the home with a thick, technical book on internal combustion engines. When I gave it to her, her eyes lit up for an instant, a flash of pure eagerness before her usual caution took over again. "This is expensive," she said, running her fingers over the glossy cover. "Knowledge is priceless," I replied. "Will you explain some of it to me? Just enough so I understand what it's about." She hesitated, then nodded. We sat in a corner of the yard away from the other kids. For half an hour, she explained the basic principles of a 4-stroke engine with surprising patience and a technical vocabulary unbefitting her age. "Look, the mixture goes in here, it gets compressed, boom, and the exhaust comes out. It's simple. The hard part is when a piece wears out and you have to know which one it is without taking the whole thing apart. I listened, marveling. It wasn't just intelligence. It was a practical, inquisitive intelligence born from the need to understand how things worked so she could fix them, so she wouldn't have to depend on anyone. Who taught you all this? I asked. She shrugged. Myself. Reading. Asking the mechanics on the street. Sometimes they give me old parts. I take them apart and put them back together. It's like a puzzle. She glanced at me. Are you really interested? Or are you just pretending to be? The frankness again disarmed me. Both, I confessed. I'm interested because you're interested. And I'm pretending to understand more than I actually do so I can keep listening to you. That answer seemed to satisfy her. She nodded and went back to the book. For the first time, there was no suspicion in her posture. Meanwhile, in my other life, the legal and financial machinery was in motion. My lawyers initiated the express divorce proceedings based on William's confession. He waived everything as promised. The joint accounts were frozen and divided. Although the bulk of the money had always been mine, his credit card linked to my accounts was canceled. Frank kept me updated daily. William had tried to get a bank loan without success. He was living with Jessica in Queens, and the tension between them, according to the reports, was palpable. Jessica, used to receiving money, was now demanding he find a job. He used to living off me, couldn't find anything he considered up to his standards. One afternoon as I was working in my study, the landline rang. Pilar called up from downstairs. Mrs. Hayes, it's for you. A Mr. Hayes. Put him through. I picked up the phone on my desk. Charlotte. His voice sounded worn. We need to talk. We've already talked. You signed. It's over. This isn't about me. It's about Ethan. He's my son. He has a right to see me. Custody is mine for now. And given the circumstances and your written confession of committing a serious crime against me and the child, a judge will be more than happy to grant me sole and exclusive custody and restrict your visits to a supervised family center, if they grant you any at all. I paused. Do you want to start that war, William? Because I have plenty of ammunition. His breathing grew agitated. He's a child. You can't use him as a weapon. I'm not using him. You two used him for 8 years. Now it's time to pay the bill. If you want to see him, you'll wait until he wants to see you. And if he complies with everything here, maybe I'll allow a supervised visit. Not before. You're a heartless witch, he spat. What I am, I said calmly, is the person holding all the cards. And you, William, have an empty hand. Don't call this house again. I hung up. Minutes later, my cell phone rang. Private number. I answered. Yes, let me talk to my son. It was Jessica, screaming hysterically. He's afraid of you, Pilar told me. You treat him like a dog. My blood boiled. Pilar no longer works for me. She's just been fired for violating confidentiality. And you, Jessica, are one step away from having your lover's signed confession land on the DA's desk. Do you really want to play this game? I don't care. I want my son. Then start acting like a mother, I snapped. A real mother doesn't abandon her newborn daughter. A real mother doesn't raise her son to be a liar and a despot. You have what you deserve. Now stop bothering me, or I assure you you won't see Ethan again until he's an adult, and by then he might not want to see you. I cut the connection, blocked the number. My hands were trembling slightly, but with pure rage. How dare they? How dare they talk about maternal rights? I went downstairs. Ethan was in the living room listlessly doing his homework. He looked at me warily. That was your father, I said bluntly. And after that, Jessica? They wanted to talk to you. His eyes lit up with a momentary hope. And I told them, no. Not for now. The hope died, replaced by anger. You can't stop me from talking to my dad. Yes, I can. And I am. Because as long as you are here under my responsibility, I decide what's best for you. And talking to two people who taught you to lie and despise is not what's best. I moved closer. If you show that you can be responsible, that you respect the rules, that you change your attitude at school, then I will reconsider a supervised visit. Not before. It's not fair, he shouted, standing up. Fair. My voice became a whisper of ice. Was it fair to steal my daughter? Was it fair to make you believe I was the enemy? What's fair is that now, for the first time in your life, you are facing the consequences of your actions and the actions of your parents. This, Ethan, is the closest to justice you have been in 8 years. Take the opportunity. I let my words sink in. He bit his lip, staring at the floor, fighting back tears of fury and helplessness. Now finish your homework. Then go to your room. That night, Frank sent me the most rewarding report yet. It included audio recordings obtained God knows how of conversations between William and Jessica in their apartment. They were arguing about money, about Ethan, about their future. In one, Jessica was crying. "This was all your idea. You said it would be easy, that we'd be rich. And now we're here trapped with nothing. And my son is with that psycho." William, his voice weary, responded, "Shut up, Jessica. It was both our ideas. You wanted your son to have his inheritance. Well, he has it, just without the inheritance. And without him. I have to see him. I can't take it anymore. Well, take it. Or all three of us go down." It was music to my ears, but it wasn't enough. I needed the final blow. And for that, I needed a public stage. A stage where William's mask would crumble for good in front of his entire world. I remembered his casual comment from weeks ago about a family event in Charleston. Their family, originally from the South, hosted a major charity gala every spring. A significant social event for them, where William always showed off his perfect family. An idea began to form in my mind. Perverse. Perfect. The next day, I went to see Valerie. This time not at the home. I had spoken with Sister Catherine, and after many assurances had gotten permission to take her to a real auto mechanics shop run by a retired, trusted friend of my father's, who agreed to open it for us on a Saturday morning. Valerie was almost unrecognizable. She wore a blue jumpsuit that was too big for her, but her eyes shone with a contained excitement. The old mechanic Manuel, a gruff but golden-hearted man, showed her the tools, the disassembled engines. "Look, kid, this is a crankshaft. If this cracks, goodbye, engine." "And how do you know if it's cracked?" Valerie asked, touching the metal part with reverence. "Good eyes and a better ear. But mostly experience." I stood on the sidelines watching. Valerie asked precise technical questions. Manuel, at first skeptical, soon surrendered to her obvious passion and knowledge. "Kid, where'd you come from? You know more than some of the apprentices I've had." She smiled, a real carefree smile that lit up her whole face. It was the first time I had seen her smile like that. My heart lurched. Leaving the shop, her hands stained with grease but her face radiant, Valerie walked beside me in silence. Suddenly, she said, "You're not like the other rich adults who sometimes come to the home. They just want to take pictures to feel good about themselves. You do things." "What kind of things?" "Real things. Like bringing me here. Or listening to me talk about engines without yawning." She looked at me. "Why?" The question was inevitable. I took a deep breath. "Because I owe you 8 years, Valerie. 8 years of mechanics, workshops of helping you with homework, of patching up your knees when you fell. I can't get that time back. But I can try from now on to do things right. Even if it's just being the person who gets you into a workshop or buys you the books you need." She nodded, looking ahead. "My friend Laura from school, the one Ethan bothered. She says her dad, before he left, would sometimes buy her candy to apologize for being late. She says the candy didn't fix anything, but at least it was a gesture." "And is this candy?" I asked, gesturing to the workshop. She thought about it. "No. This is a wrench. It's for tightening bolts. And for loosening them." She looked at me again, and in her eyes I saw a flicker of complicity. "It's more useful." I almost burst into tears right there in the middle of the street. Instead, I just nodded. "Yes. It's more useful." Back at the home, before we said goodbye, she turned to me. "Hey, that big party Sister Catherine was talking about the other day, the one for rich people in Charleston. Are you going? The charity gala?" "Yes, I have to go. It's part of a job I have to finish." "A job?" "Against them," she asked, with an insight that took my breath away. "Yes, against them." She nodded seriously. "Well, hope it goes well. And be careful." It was advice. Almost a show of concern. "I will be," I whispered. "Thank you, Valerie." That night, I set the final phase in motion. I called Frank. "I need everything ready for the Hayes Family Foundation Gala in Charleston. Next Friday. Projection sound. All discreet, but impeccable. And I need someone on the inside, on the catering staff, who can handle the projection system at the right moment. That's very specific, Charlotte. And risky. I'll pay for it as if it were gold. And I need a copy of the entire dossier with the juiciest audio recordings, the hospital documents, the photos ready to be delivered to the press in Charleston and New York at a precise time. Friday at 9 p.m. sharp. Frank whistled. You're putting on a show. I hung up. Then I called my lawyer. Prepare the papers to file for permanent and exclusive custody of Ethan and to begin adoption proceedings for Valerie. I want them ready to file the Monday after the gala. Charlotte, with William's confession and the evidence, custody of the boy is almost certain. But adopting the girl, it's complicated. The system, I know. And I'll pay whatever it takes. I'll hire the best specialists. But I want the papers ready. It's a statement of intent, for me and for her. As I was hanging up, I heard a noise in the hallway. Ethan was there in his pajamas, listening. How much had he heard? His face was a mask of confusion and fear. Adoption, he asked in a trembling voice. You're going to bring that girl here. That psycho. I stood up and walked toward him. That psycho. Ethan is my daughter. Your biological half-sister, though, you may find that hard to understand. And if she wants to, and when she wants to, she will live here. This is or will be her home too. No, this is my house, I've always lived here. On a lie, I reminded him without mercy. And lies have an expiration date. Yours has expired. Now you have a choice. Learn to live with the truth and maybe in time find your place here. Or keep clinging to the lie and end up with no place at all. You decide. He stared at me, and for the first time I saw something more than rage or defiance in his eyes. I saw panic. The panic of a child watching the only world he has ever known crumble with no idea how to build a new one. Without another word, he turned and went to his room. This time he closed the door without slamming it. I stood in the hall. The price of blood, my blood was high. I was collecting it drop by drop from William, from Jessica, from Ethan, but it was costing me too. Every confrontation, every coldly executed plan left me a little emptier, a little colder. There was only one antidote, a pair of grayish-green eyes that shone when disassembling an engine. A girl who didn't know how to back down. For her and to reclaim her, I was willing to pay any price, even the price of becoming for a time the same kind of monster they had been. With one crucial difference, I wasn't attacking innocents, only those who deserved it. Charleston was waiting, and with it my grand finale, the finale that I hoped would not only destroy them but would also set me free. To finally start living. Charleston smelled of gardenias, salt air, and expensive bourbon. The grand ballroom of the historic hotel overlooking the harbor buzzed with music, glittering lights, and the murmur of hundreds of voices. Under the banner of the Hayes Family Foundation, the atmosphere was one of forced festivity. Aunts, uncles, old family friends of William's laughed too loudly, toasted with too much enthusiasm. They all knew or suspected. The sudden divorce, William's disappearance from the New York social circuit, it was an open secret. I arrived alone. I wore a custom-made gown by Carolina Herrera, black and white, with a severe elegance that contrasted with the pastel ruffles and vibrant colors around me. In my clutch, I didn't carry a compact. I carried a small remote control device, and my phone with Frank on the other end, waiting for my signal. William was there. He looked like he had aged 10 years in a few weeks. He wore his tuxedo with an uncomfortable stiffness, his smile a tense grimace. Beside him, trying to go unnoticed but drawing attention by her obvious bewilderment, was Jessica. He had either invited her or she had crashed, for William's family shamed but eager to support one of their own against the witch. From New York, she was now the official partner, the victim of their son's heart, according to whatever story he must have spun. Ethan was with them. I had brought him. It was part of the plan. He wore a small tuxedo that was too big for him and looked around with a mixture of awe and resentment. When he saw me, he looked away. He had agreed to come on one condition: he wouldn't have to talk to me. It was a fair deal. Richard Hayes, the family patriarch, a man in his 70s with a silver mustache and sharp eyes, raised his glass of champagne. To family, to unity, the most important thing in turbulent times. A murmur of approval went through the crowd. All eyes slid to me, standing slightly apart, and then to William and Jessica, united in their discomfort. It was my moment. Before the old man could continue, I stepped forward. My heels clicked firmly on the polished marble floor, silencing the conversations. I stood in the center of the room in front of the small stage. "Richard," I said, my voice clear, needing no microphone. "Allow me to add a toast." The old man looked at me with surprise and mistrust, but he nodded with a polite gesture. William went pale. Jessica grabbed his arm. I took the glass a confused waiter offered me. I didn't raise it. I held it indifferently. My toast, I began, my voice projecting with the coldness of a corporate press release, is to the truth. A truth that has been buried for 8 years, and which tonight comes to light. William took a step forward. Charlotte, this is not the time or the place. If you want to talk to me in private. His tone was pleading, filled with panic. I'm finished talking to you in private, William. I cut him off. Then I looked at the assembled family, at the curious onlookers from other parties who were starting to crane their necks. Ladies and gentlemen, most of you know me. I am Charlotte Hayes, or soon just Charlotte. For 8 years, I was William's wife and the mother, I believed, of his son, Ethan. I gestured with a slight nod toward Ethan, who shrank as if he wanted to disappear. But it was all a lie. A carefully constructed lie by William Hayes and his mistress, Jessica Miller, who today have the audacity to present themselves here as a couple. A gasp of shock rippled through the attendees. Richard opened his mouth to protest, but I had already taken the remote from my clutch and pressed the single button. On the large projection screen behind the stage, where idyllic family photos had been cycling moments before, a huge, sharp image appeared. It was the copy of Jessica's hospital record, her name and the notation clearly visible. Product male, 6 pounds 13 ounces. Released to Father William Thev, furiously crossed out, and the different handwriting that said, neonatal death. The murmur became a buzz. The photo changed. Now it was my admission record, a circle highlighting the word sex, where under a smudge the word male was clearly legible, written in a handwriting several of them recognized as William's. On the 12th of September 2018, I continued over the dead silence. I gave birth by emergency C-section to a baby girl. On the same floor that same day, Jessica Miller gave birth to a healthy, strong baby boy. My husband, along with his mistress and with the help of a bribed nurse, switched the babies. My daughter, they abandoned a newborn on the steps of a health clinic. Her son they gave to me, making me believe he was mine, that he was sick, a weak preemie. The images on the screen were changing, now showing photos William, Jessica, and Ethan laughing in a park, others at a cafe, another of Jessica stroking Ethan's hair. The intimacy was undeniable. Then a picture of Valerie appeared, standing in the yard of the group home. Her file photo. Her face with my eyes contrasted brutally with the next image, a photo of me as a young woman. My daughter, I said, and for the first time my voice broke slightly, not with weakness but with a fierce contained emotion survived. She grew up in a group home. Her name is Valerie. She is the girl whom their son Ethan, I pointed again, and this time every head turned to the boy who had started to cry, silently bullied at school, because she was defending other girls from his thuggery. The daughter they stole from me, defending others from the son they foisted on me. A bully like his father. The scandal was monumental. Shouts, exclamations. Richard looked like he was about to have a heart attack. One of William's cousins burst into tears. Others stared at William with horror. It's lies! Fake photos! William shouted, but his voice was lost in the uproar. Jessica was trying to hide behind him, crying hysterically. The screen then showed the front page of William's signed confession, his signature clearly visible. And for the grand finale, the audio kicked in. William's voice, clear and desperate, filled the ballroom. It was her idea. At first, Jessica was pregnant. I had just met you. You had money status. It was the opportunity of a lifetime. The clip continued with William describing the baby swap. Then Jessica's voice shrill. This was all your idea. You said it would be easy, that we'd be rich. It was the final nail. The Hayes family, proud and traditional, was listening to one of their own confess to the most abject crime imaginable. The scandal ceased to be a murmur and became a public trial. Looks of disgust, of betrayal, were fixed on William. Some people physically moved away from him. Richard finally found his voice, his face ashen. He approached William. Is it true? You did that? William couldn't answer. His gaze was lost, fixed on the screen where his own signature condemned him. He gave an almost imperceptible nod. It was enough. The old man recoiled as if he had seen a snake. Get out, he said in a raw, broken voice. Get out of here. And take that woman with you. You are not my family. You are nothing. At that moment, as if part of the show, 2 pairs of Charleston police officers, discreetly notified by Frank an hour earlier, made their way through the crowd. They were in uniform. Their presence was as shocking at the gala as an elephant in a china shop. One of them addressed William. Mr. William Hayes, Miss. Jessica Miller, you'll need to come with us to the station for questioning regarding an investigation into alleged crimes of child abduction, falsification of documents, and family abandonment. It was absolute chaos. Jessica started screaming, struggling. William, however, seemed to completely deflate. He let them put the handcuffs on him without resistance, his gaze empty, fixed on nothing. As the officers led them away, they passed near Ethan. The boy looked at them terrified, and then he looked at me. In his eyes, there was no longer hatred, only absolute primal fear. People were whispering, pointing. Some were taking out their phones to record. The scandal, now total, had consumed its protagonists. Richard staggered over to me. "Charlotte, I had no idea. I swear on my mother's grave." "I know, Richard," I said, with a coldness that offered no comfort. The lie was perfect, but all lies fall. This one has fallen here in front of everyone, so there can be no doubt. The old man nodded ashamed and walked away, leaning on a grandson. The ballroom packed minutes earlier was rapidly emptying. The family was fleeing the contamination of the scandal. Only Ethan trembling like a leaf next to a chair, and I remained. I walked over to him. I didn't touch him. "You see, Ethan," I said in a low voice, just for him. "This is how a world built on lies falls apart. Your father wasn't a hero. He was a thief and a coward." He said nothing, just kept trembling. "Come on," I said. "We're going home. To New York. You're home for now, where at least the rules are clear." He nodded mechanically and followed me like an automaton. As we left the ballroom under the light of the chandeliers and the cheerful hubbub from other events oblivious to the tragedy, I felt the weight of 100 gazes on me, not of reproach, but of a fearful respect. I had executed my revenge in public with surgical precision and ruthless cruelty. I was no longer the cheated wife. I was the woman who had destroyed a man and his mistress with the truth as her only weapon. A dark legend was born that night in Charleston, and I was at its center. But I didn't care. I got in the car with Ethan. As we drove away, I looked in the rearview mirror. The hotel ballroom looked like an empty shell illuminated by colored lights that now seemed to be mocking. Frank sent me a text, press notified. "We'll start hitting the digital editions in an hour. All according to plan." I replied, "Thank you. Bonus is in your account." Then I dialed another number. Sister Catherine answered on the second ring. "Is everything all right, Mrs. Hayes?" Her voice was worried. She had known the general plan. "It's finished, Sister Catherine. Is Valerie sleeping like an angel? Dreaming of engines, I suppose. She doesn't know anything." And the boy, I glanced at Ethan, who was staring out the window, mute tear tracks dry on his cheeks. "With me. Safe. I'll come see you tomorrow. At 2. "We'll be waiting, Charlotte," Sister Catherine said, using my first name for the first time. I hung up. The highway to New York opened before us, dark and straight. Behind us lay the noise, the scandal, the ruins of several lives. Ahead, only uncertainty. But for the first time in 8 years, an uncertainty based on the truth. My truth. Valerie's truth. I had won. But as in chess, after the checkmate, the board is empty. You have to decide what to do with the pieces that are left, and how to start a new game. The silence in the car on the way back to New York was dense, physical. Ethan wasn't crying, wasn't looking out the window. He was just breathing with the precision of an automaton, as if even that required a superhuman effort. I didn't speak to him. There was nothing to say that wasn't a fact, and the facts had been made brutally clear that night. When we arrived at the Park Avenue townhouse, Pilar, the new serious-faced housekeeper, was waiting. I had given her precise instructions. Maintain the house cook. Ask no questions. She was not a companion for Ethan. He no longer had a companion. He had consequences. "Ma'am," Pilar said with a nod. She didn't even look at Ethan. "There's a light supper in the kitchen if you wish." "No thank you, Pilar. Ethan, go up to your room. We'll talk tomorrow." He obeyed without a word. His steps on the staircase were those of a stranger, almost a prisoner. And in a way, he was. A prisoner of the truth of his actions and of my will. The next day, the digital newspapers were on fire. Scandal at Charleston, Gala tycoon confesses to baby swap. The revenge of a betrayed wife. The photos, the audio clips, it was all there. Frank had done his job impeccably. My phone started ringing at 7 a.m. Lawyers, journalists, curious friends. I silenced it. I only took one call from my lawyer. "Charlotte, it's a bloodbath. William's people are trying to negotiate. They're claiming he was coerced into signing the confession." "They have the recordings from the gala," I replied dryly. and the testimony of Dr. Reed, who has already agreed to testify, and the hospital file. Let them negotiate with the judge, and the adoption petition, file it today, along with the request for sole and permanent custody of Ethan. There was a pause. Charlotte, with the boy after last night and with his biological parents in custody, they'll almost certainly grant it to you. But the girl's adoption, it's a signal. To the judge, to the system, and to her. File it. I hung up. I wasn't optimistic, but I was stubborn. And rich. And both of those things help in the system. I went to see Valerie that afternoon. Sister Catherine greeted me with a look of weary understanding. She had seen the news. She's in the garden, she said, watering. She likes the earth. Says it's more predictable than people. I found her crouched by some tomato plants, concentrating on directing the stream of water to the base of each plant, not the leaves. She wore an old straw hat, and her hands were caked in mud. You have good technique, I said, approaching. She turned. She didn't seem surprised. Her eyes under the brim of the hat scanned me. You were on the news, she said, without preamble. In Charleston. I saw it on Sister's phone. She paused. It was brutal. But clean. You used their own lies against them. It wasn't approval. It was an analysis. I nodded. Yes. They're in custody now. And the hard part begins. The trials, the paperwork. She stood up, wiping her hands on her pants. And the boy Ethan, at home, waiting. Are you going to kick him out? The question was direct, like everything about her. I didn't answer directly. I've given him a choice. When things are calmer, he can go live with his mother if he wants. Or stay. But if he stays, it will be on my terms. No luxuries. Like a normal kid. He has to learn. Valerie nodded thoughtfully. Learning hurts. I know. We stood in silence for a moment, just the sound of water dripping from the hose. You said she began not looking at me, that you wanted to get to know me. At my pace. I stand by that. Well, my pace is slow. And it has conditions. First, I don't want to go to your house. Not yet. I have my stuff here, my friend, Sister Catherine. She paused. Second, I don't want you buying me things. Only what I really need. Like the book or the workshop. No expensive dresses or stupid stuff. Agreed. Third, I want to keep going to my public school with my friends. I don't want some prep school where they'll point at me. A smile touched my lips. Also agreed. Although prep school isn't a very polite term. She, for the first time, almost smiled back. I know. Fourth, if someday, I tell you I don't want to see you anymore, or that I need a break, you respect it. No drama. I gritted my teeth. This was the hardest condition. I will respect it, I said, and each word was as heavy as a stone. But I will fight Valerie to make sure that day never comes, with all my weapons, which are basically persistence and stubbornness. She looked at me, and a flicker of respect seemed to shine in her eyes. That's fair, she paused. Do you have conditions, one? I said. That you allow me to try to be your mother. Not that you call me mom, not that you love me, just that you allow me the attempt. To make mistakes, to correct them, to learn, that's all. Valerie thought it over, looking at the tomato plants. Then she nodded. Okay, we can try. It was an agreement, not a hug, not a kiss. A verbal contract between two survivors, each with her own wounds and defenses. But for me, it was more than any court ruling, more than any revenge. It was a beginning. The following weeks were a controlled whirlwind. The court proceedings were swift. William and Jessica sunk by the evidence, and their own contradictory statements accepted a plea deal. Jessica was convicted of complicity and child abandonment with a lesser prison sentence for her cooperation. She would be on parole, but with a record. William, with more aggravating factors, received a longer sentence. It wouldn't be a life term, but his reputation, his family, his world were in ruins. And most importantly, they were stripped of all parental rights over Ethan and, of course, Valerie. My custody of Ethan was declared permanent. Valerie's adoption, as I feared, was a longer road, but I began the process becoming her legal guardian. And following our contract, I began to get to know her. I went to the home almost daily. Sometimes, just to have hot chocolate with her. And Sister Catherine. Other times I took her out. Never to expensive places. To the science museum, to a robotics workshop for kids for donuts. We spoke little of feelings. We spoke of engines of her friends, of how badly a certain baseball team was playing. I learned more from her than I thought possible. I learned her language made of practical gestures and a fierce loyalty to her own. Ethan, meanwhile, lived in a kind of limbo. He went to school, did his homework, complied. He no longer challenged me. He no longer spoke of his father. One afternoon, I found him crying silently in the kitchen. Pilar was out. I approached. I didn't touch him. "What's wrong?" I asked. I don't know what to do," he whispered without looking at me. "I don't know who I am." It was the most honest question he had ever asked me. "Right now," I said with a coolness that wasn't cruel, just realistic, "you are an 8-year-old boy whose biological father and mother are in prison. You live with the woman you thought was your mother and who you now know is not. It's a mess, but you have time to decide who you want to be. And you have 2 options. Let this define you as a bitter victim, or use it to build something different, something better." "How?" he asked, his voice breaking. "By starting with the basics. Being responsible here. Being responsible. Being decent at school. And when you're ready, seeing your mother, Jessica, and your father, and deciding with your eyes open what you want." I didn't promise to love him. I didn't promise it would be easy. I gave him the truth, the same truth that had been so hard for me to find. It seemed to calm him a little. At least he stopped crying. A month after the gala, I had an unexpected visitor. Dr. Reed wanted to see me. We met at a cafe near the hospital. "I wanted to thank you," she said, sipping her coffee, "for bringing this to light, for giving my memory a voice. For years, I doubted myself. I thought, maybe with the stress, I could have been confused. Seeing your story on the news was a bitter validation, but a validation nonetheless. I owe you my thanks, doctor. Without your courage to tell me the truth, I would still be living the lie." She nodded. "And the girl Valerie is incredible," I said, and the emotion surprised me. "Strong, smart. A fighter. Like her mother," the doctor said with a sad smile. "Take care of her. And take care of yourself." Time passed. The scandals in the press were replaced by others. William began his sentence. Jessica. Hers. Ethan slowly began to emerge from his shell. We were not a family. We were 3 damaged people, sharing a space, each healing in their own way, at their own pace. And Valerie, my Valerie. Our attempt became a routine. Every other Saturday, she would sleep over. At first in the guest room. Then, without saying anything, I began to redecorate a sunny room that looked out onto the garden. I put in empty bookshelves, a large desk, a powerful lamp. I didn't tell her who it was for. One day, when she came over, she saw it. She stood in the doorway looking. "The shelves are for books," I said from the hallway. "Mechanics or whatever. The desk is for taking things apart. The window faces the garden. It has good light." She said nothing. She walked in, ran her hand over the polished wood of the desk. Then she nodded. "It's okay." It wasn't, "Thank you." It was, "It's okay." And for me, that was more than enough. Today, 6 months after the Charleston Gala, I'm sitting in the back garden. It's spring. The air smells of jasmine, real jasmine, growing on the fence, not the scent of the gala. I'm reviewing some reports. The company is doing well. I've focused on work like never before, and it has responded. I hear the sliding door open. It's Valerie. She's back from her after-school workshop. Her backpack is full of borrowed tools, and her hands are as always a little dirty. She comes over. She glances at my teacup nearly empty. She stops, turns around, goes into the kitchen, and comes back out with a pitcher of water. Without a word, she refills my glass. She doesn't look at me. She just does it. A small, practical gesture. Nothing extraordinary. But it's a gesture born of attention, of perceiving a need, and meeting it without being asked. It's a gesture of care. She heads back toward the house, but stops at the door without turning around. "Hey," she says, "the engine on the old lawnmower is making a weird noise. Maybe on Saturday we can look at it." My heart skips a beat. "Okay," I say, my voice hoarse. "Saturday. Together." She nods and goes inside. I sit there with the glass of cold water in my hand, looking at the spot where she stood. She hasn't called me Mom. Maybe she never will, but she said together, and she filled my glass. Through the living room window, I see Ethan. He's watching TV, but quietly. He doesn't slam doors anymore. Sometimes he even helps Pilar set the table. He's a quieter, more thoughtful boy. The arrogant, cruel child is gone, leaving a scared and confused one who maybe, just maybe, has a chance. The sun is setting over New York. The shadows lengthen in the garden. I put down the report. That's enough for today. I have my daughter back. I have my life back. I've gotten justice, or something like it. And now comes the hardest and most valuable part. Building. Brick by brick, gesture by gesture, day by day. With no guarantees, but with the truth finally on our side. And for the first time in 8 years, the truth tastes like something other than bile. It tastes like fresh water in a glass filled by a pair of small, skilled hands that are slowly learning not to be afraid of the world. And maybe not to be afraid of me.
Some days feel off, like I'm standing but still falling. A little pain, a little tired, and no one to tell it all to. There are days that feel unsteady, like I'm drifting out of place. Every step just feels so heavy, with a smile I have to fake. A little hurt I keep inside me, a little weight I always hide, and 1,000 quiet worries I've been holding deep inside. There's no one here to tell it to, no one who would understand. So I carry all these feelings like they're slipping through my hands. A little broken, little lost, trying hard to just get through. All these nights I stay awake with everything I never say to you. I keep walking through the silence like it's all I've ever known. Every crowded room reminds me how it feels to be alone. There's no one here to tell it to, no one who would understand. So I carry all these feelings like they're slipping through my hands. A little broken, little lost, trying hard to just get through. All these nights I stay awake with everything I never say to you. Maybe one day I'll be stronger, maybe I'll learn how to speak, but for now I keep it buried in the parts of me too weak. There's no one here to tell it to, no one who would understand. So I carry all these feelings like they're slipping through my hands. A little broken, little lost, trying hard to just get through. All these nights I stay awake with everything I never say to you. I'm freezing, I'm bleeding, slowly fading away. But don't worry, I'm fine. The cold has settled in my heartbeat, like winter living in my veins. Every breath feels numb and fragile, every smile just hides the pain. I'm breaking quietly in silence, falling slow without a sound. Yet I keep saying I'm okay, while my world burns to the ground. I'm frozen here, I'm bleeding slowly, dying piece by piece inside. But I still whisper, it's alright, just to keep you from goodbye. I'm shattered, love, but don't you worry, I'll pretend till my last breath. Even while my soul is fading, I'll say everything's okay. Maybe pain just learned to live here. Maybe sorrow feels like home. So I wear my wounds like armor and survive them all alone. I'm frozen here, I'm bleeding slowly, dying piece by piece inside. But I still whisper, it's alright, just to keep you from goodbye. I'm shattered, love, but don't you worry, I'll pretend till my last breath. Even while my soul is fading, I'll say everything's okay. If you ever see me smiling, no, it's just my last defense. 'Cause sometimes love means hiding how much you're suffering. No, I'm frozen here, I'm bleeding slowly, dying piece by piece inside. But I still whisper, it's alright, just to keep you from goodbye. I'm shattered, love, but don't you worry, I'll pretend till my last breath. Even while my soul is fading, I'll say everything's okay. It's okay.